Hi, I'm Clésia Mendes, and welcome to the second season of Womanhood from the Inside Out. In this interview series, we'll be discovering and uncovering the nature of womanhood from the inside out. Why is it important? When does it show? How can we identify it? And what are the implications of womanhood from the inside out? And today's guest is my dear friend, Jo Munday. Jo is a communication coach, video producer, and a copywriter who helps conscious businesses, charities, and coaches promote the integrity and truth of what they do in a marketable and profitable way. She believes conscious marketing is about sharing your passion and skills in an authentic way and helps people develop a message that resonates with both themselves and their audience. Welcome, Jo.
Hi, Clésia. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so much. It's my pleasure that you're here. So, a question that I like to start the show with is, how did you first came across the inside-out understanding of life?
I think it's an interesting one because the inside-out understanding of life is such a nice way of putting. I suppose it's a shift from looking outside of yourself and just assuming that that's what life is, and then experiencing a feeling or a connection or wisdom, information that you realise hasn't come from anywhere outside of yourself. It's come from within you, kind of unmistakably, in a way that just kind of floors you and just something clicks, and that's what happened to me. I kind of it was actually it was about a year before I came across Jamie Smart and the Inside Out Understanding, and that was I was actually at a personal development event because I'd sort of, about 6 months before, I was in my office looking around the room saying there must be more to life than this. There's more to the world, and I don't know what it is, but there was a restlessness that I needed to kind of fulfill. I started to explore coaching and personal development, and it was really to kind of get those things in my life in order that I felt weren't in order. I didn't have any kind of I suppose I want to say kind of spiritual, religious, anything like that reference point or background or anything like that. So it was purely to kind of find a bit more purpose in my life, and sort of cure that restlessness in a way I thought, which would be to have change my job or whatever. But as it transpired, I went to this event, 3-day event, and they asked us to sort of think about a moment that we were really grateful for, and as I did that, I sort of had this really strong feeling of oneness, and like I was, like the whole room was filled with love, and I was connected to everything. It was like I disappeared really, and I was connected to not only the people but the ceiling and the walls and the chairs. It was like everything dissolved, and I was like, oh right, that's what God is like. And I immediately it was completely new, but it was completely familiar as well. It wasn't startling, it wasn't weird, it was like, it was completely transformational, but it wasn't it was kind of understatedly amazing, if that makes sense. It was beautiful, but it was also like, oh yeah, that's what it is. Like it's kind of like if you ever like meet someone and you know them, you feel like you've known them before, or you walk into a building and you feel like, oh, this just feels comfortable already. It was a bit like that, and it was like, I didn't know, just the knowing that I was going to be okay, and immediately I did things like I sort of stopped drinking. I'd sort of previously been quite dependent on drink to kind of calm my nerves and things, And then I was just on this path of kind of exploring meditation and various things, because it was just this real, I was like, I got that feeling again. That was amazing, you know, and I knew that was the kind of that feeling of love was within me. So I was just kind of exploring ways that I could reconnect to that, and I joined a meditation group, and like met people who were also like, yeah, you know, that's normal to have that feeling, and it's there all the time. And then it was about a year later, I went to a talk that Jamie Smart did, who wrote Clarity, and he, at the time, I was kind of exploring the spiritual side of things, but also I was also intrigued by coaching as well, and the role in that. So I was doing a coaching training on top of that, and then, but it didn't quite feel, to me, there was the depth of it was slightly missing for me. And when I saw Jamie speak, he was kind of marrying this connection, this spirituality that I'd felt with coaching, and that immediately I was like, something really hit me when he was talking. Really resonated, that what he was sharing was very simple, felt very true, and I just fell into a very quiet space again, and had almost as big an impact as that time the year before, of oneness. And so what appealed to me was how he just, there was something so clean and clear about this idea that all of our reality is thought, and all of our experience is coming from within. That really appealed, and it was something that I hadn't seen in religious practices, or even in the meditation group I was part of, was beautiful. But it was there was like stuff to do. There was like a technique to do, and this was kind of pointing at some facts of our life, spiritual facts of our life, in a really pure and simple way. So that was the sort of start of a journey into exploring that understanding, and it's been amazing ever since. And that was 5 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Jo. I love you. I love your story. I love this story. And one of the pieces that I would like to highlight is that you were minding your business in a personal development course, and then for whatever reason you get that insight and you get that experience of oneness. And I love the fact the way you said it. What I heard is it was extraordinary and ordinary at the same time, because you had that experience of, oh, and then you thought, oh, I recognize this. I know what this is about. So I really love it. And then how the immediate impact, one of the things you spoke about is that I used to drink and then I stopped drinking. So that was an immediate effect, but something that you saw personally. So that was one of the pieces that I loved. The way I heard it was like ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. And it's not something that you were even searching for. And then by becoming curious about that 1 year down the line, that you get to meet the person who gets to marry the two. You were already interested in coaching, so that person gets to tell you about coaching, and also talking about that. I'm going to use the word awakening, and at the same time, I don't want my audience to get too caught on the word. It's just a metaphor. It's just, let's just go with it. Just think is ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. That word awakening. So as you are looking to that same direction, then you meet a person who is like, oh yeah, and he ends up marrying what you're already interested in to what you experience, and it starts making sense, and you start seeing these more and more deeply. So thank you so much for that. And one of the things that I would love to explore, if it would be okay with you, is that once after you had the experience, and then you met Jamie Smart later on, and you started changing, how was your interaction? How did your interaction with family members and friends changed, or did it change?
Um, yeah, I think a few of my friends who probably saw me as more of a party girl were a bit confused about the fact that I wasn't interested in that so much, and so I think yeah, it's been a journey where I've made a lot of new friends, kind of what's felt like very quickly and very deeply, and then um, and of my established friends, I think it has always been, and family. There's been varying levels of embracing my new interests, and some people don't want to ask me about it, or I suppose it naturally sort of drift away a bit. But yeah, it's interesting. I think in terms of and what's lovely is that is the feeling of connection that you feel inside, and more easily and more readily kind of expands to your friends and family, to the extent that it doesn't matter so much whether they do agree with you or not. And I definitely feel more loving and connected within my family. That I wasn't really expecting or looking for that, but it's really beautiful. And yeah, I just find that feeling of connection, it kind of wants to come in, and it's just kind of allowing it to come in, and or just dropping the habitual thought that was getting in its way. But yeah, overall, I think my relationships and the connection I have with my friends is a deep, and definitely.
Mm. And I love that, because sometimes I speak with a few people who came across this inside out understanding, and some of them, they say, well, oh, I lost a lot of my previous friends, and I became curious about it. I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? But then when I was talking with you, you said a similar thing. I said, oh yeah, I lost a few friends, but I gain a lot more now. And it's a lot easier. And we get into this deep connection really quickly. I was like, oh, fabulous. So that is something we need to let people know. It's like, yeah, sometimes you need to open your hand to gain something new and fresh and deeper. There is
Yeah,
more.
and I think something that's recently coming up for me is that I used to be really troubled, kind of painfully troubled by thinking that someone didn't like me. That was really or was being hostile. That was something that I take on very personally, and hold on to that fear or feeling, or whatever you want to describe it. And it just doesn't feel so personal now. Like, obviously sometimes I can still take offense, but more often than not, I'll see that it's not a personal attack, and it ultimately, the connection is more powerful than the apparent hostility, or ultimately there's a completeness to me and the other person that sort of overrides any kind of holding on to sort of like animosity or anything. So, and it's interesting because I think as you start to speak about these things more publicly, you're going to get people who don't agree, or maybe even, like, quite hostile to what you're saying. Might get angry. So I'm seeing how vital that is, to not take that personally. Like if someone thinks you're a complete idiot for what you're saying, then that's their issue, and that's fine. But to hold on to it, or to take it as a view about yourself, then it's going to be very hard work to start talking about these things publicly, or sharing or coaching. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Oh, I'm curious about that. Can you give us an example of what you're pointing at?
Um, yeah, I've always felt in the past that like I would used to hold a grudge against someone if I felt like they didn't, or if they had a go at me about something and I felt it was unfair or something. I wouldn't be able to let it go very easily, and I also, I think unconsciously was just a bit too scared of that hostility from others to sort of speak out about what I was doing, or just keep myself to myself more, and I'd only talk about these kind of things if I was asked, or it was obvious that it was going to be a safe space to do so. And I think I see it with a lot of other coaches and people like exploring this. Is it's like there's a little bit of a reticence to sort of go out there and speak it and share it, because it's quite a different way of looking at the world. So it's going to attract maybe criticism, maybe hostility. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, in a way, it does. In a way, it does, and this is what it occurred to me. So I had the inspiration to start doing the Womanhood from the Inside Out series last year, back in I think it was January of 2016, right? And until now, until then, when I had the inspiration to start doing the Womanhood from the Inside Out series, I almost led a double life, and I'll explain what I mean with that. So basically, I've got a corporate background, and before that, I used to run my business. So my corporate background, we used to tend to wear black and white suits. Is very boring space, and without giving too much of what I do, people can find that on Google. It's like, yeah, is very established, very boring, very structured. And at the same time, the second part of my life that I call the double life is that I always had. I always had an interest for personal development, travel, wearing a lot of color, as people can see, and a bent for spirituality. I always had. I guess I started becoming interested in that when I was actually 7. I had an experience myself when I turned 7 years old, and then started looking to that direction. But I chose to get into corporate a few years down the line. So it was almost like that was my double life, right? Sounds horrible. So I've got an interest in personal development and spirituality, and I work and I've got a corporate career. So without me noticing, when I had the inspiration to start doing womanhood from the inside out, and start telling the world, this is what I'm really interested in and this is what I want to explore, to me it was almost like coming out of the closet, right? Because I had this, and it's all thinking, it's all thought. I had this image of how people were supposed to perceive me as. And at that moment, once I had the insight to start doing the show, it's like all of that fell away. I really, really did measure all of that. It's just that I felt the inspiration. I felt called to start doing the series, and I followed through on that. Now, what sort of opportunities will open up from doing the show? I don't know. Will it shut some doors from my corporate background doors? I don't know that either. Am I concerned? I don't know. But I'm following my calling. I am following my heart, really. So yeah, so this is what I'm seeing at the moment. So it's like it's just being that space of not knowing, and at the same time honoring honoring the calling, the inside out calling. It's like, okay, can you do that for now? And this is what I'm doing for now. I'm answering that calling for now without knowing what will open up next.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really amazing. And I loved what you said about maybe some of the corporate doors were shut because ultimately they were probably meant to shut anyway, and they weren't like sort of they weren't clicking with what you're sort of exploring now and resonating with. So it's kind of like you can't, if the cup's already full, you can't put any more in. You have to empty the cup a bit to put some fresh in it. And so I think often when we come to this big insight about things and need to make changes, that is inevitably about letting things go. And that could be people, possessions, jobs, whatever it is. It's sort of sometimes that takes courage to do so.
Yeah. And I like that way a lot, courage. Okay, courage. It's like sometimes it's just not sometimes it really dropping thinking, dropping thought, attempting to get things right off the set or get all the ducks lined up, because that is not the way life works anyway. So
yeah. And Jamie Smart actually said that the root was telling us years ago, the root meaning of courage is coeur, the French coeur, which is heart. And it's, when you think of it like that, it's a really beautiful and kind of accurate description of courage, because it is actually tuning into your heart and what is right for you. And I think, well, for me personally anyway, before I'd heard that analogy, when I think of courage, I always think of, oh gosh, what have I got to be courageous for? Something scary is coming and I've got to so you can kind of have this like negative association with that word of like, oh God, brace yourself, you've got to be courageous. But actually it's just sort of tuning into what's true for you and kind of like making a stand for that. And that might involve letting things go, or it might involve some kind of challenge or disagreement, but it's there's a core reason for that, and that is listening to yourself and listening to your truth and what's right for you, regardless of the fallout of that or the circumstances. It's so I kind of see you can't really go wrong when you're following that, when you're listening to yourself in that way.
yes, I love that about trusting your own wisdom, because it's quite different of what is out there. And when I'm being a little bit more specific in terms of social media, television, internet, everything else, is there is this perceived idea that if you want to know how things work, you are supposed to find the experts and listen to the experts and listen to the people who got the PhDs and so on and so forth. And reality is that you are the expert in yourself. No one else knows what sort of gifts you've got inside of you. It's like, even talking about, it's like probably not even you know about all the gifts you've got inside of you yet. And the only way to discover that, to realize that for yourself, is actually to look within and trust that nudge, or that sometimes is like more like a push. One of these days you wake up in the morning and you just know what to do. You don't know where that came from. It just is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we've all got that kind of inner compass, really, which is really cool. We've all got that intuition. We've all got we've all got a compass that's a guide to sort of give us clues about the next step or whatever. And I don't know. I find anyway that the more I listen to that, it's like the kind of analogy of like building a muscle. Like the more the listening to that strengthens it, and I just find it easier when I get a good feeling about something. I'm like, oh, okay, let's explore that. And often it's not a feeling that you can put your finger on and describe, and often you're getting a sense to do something that you don't really know why. But trusting the feeling, just trusting the feeling rather than the outcome, or trying to work out why you're feeling that. And perhaps the reason for it won't emerge until days or weeks or months later, but it's like something comes up and you think, oh wow, that's the perfect solution, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's easy to trust. I think we talk a lot about trusting the unknown, like within the power of trusting the unknown. But if you've got that feeling, it's never really unknown, because that feeling is your guide. And it makes it easy to trust the unknown, because you're sort of following your wisdom, following your intuition. Because on the one hand, I know sort of within the 3P community talk about, it's always unknown. It is always unknown. But on the other hand, it kind of is never unknown, because you do always have that. You do always have your inner guide, and it's always there, even if you can't always tune into it or hear it.
I love that imagery, because when you say the inner compass, yeah, I was thinking about that always pointing to north. And as long you know that you are, well, actually you are resourceful, and you've got capacity for insight, and as long you remember, you realize for yourself that really we are experiencing thoughts, that keeps pointing you to the right direction. Beautiful. And something that occurred to me when oh god, I lost track of time now. I think it was back in May. Yes, back in May I went to we were the two of us together, actually. We went to a retreat, a 5-day retreat with Jan Chipman and Jenny Smart in Tenerife, and the weather was gorgeous. And I had a chance of having a conversation with Chip, and he was telling me how when he came across the Inside Out understanding many years ago. I think more than 40 years ago. And he said that Sid told him that he would be teaching this stuff to people throughout the world. And when they are a couple, Jen and Chip, so when they heard this at first time, they were baffled, because they didn't know how that would happen. They live in a small island. I was like, how can we touch people from the entire world? How can that happen? He said, but we trusted what had been delivered to us. So we trusted that, and we knew things would open up as time went by, and as long we keep looking to this direction. And it was an interesting thing that they were sharing with me, was like, he said, back then, Skype hadn't been invented yet. There was no technology such as Zoom yet. So you start like numbering all these technology tools that didn't existed yet, but they trusted that a way would be found. So I found that so inspirational and so inspiring. I was like, oh yeah, probably not, or for a fact, there are so many other options that are not open to us yet. However, is as long we trust that knowing, right, and keep looking that direction, things will develop and will be created, and will open up, opportunities will expand. So yeah, so we don't need to know everything in advance, as long we follow the wisdom to follow at least the next step. And the next step could be to have a conversation with Jo, reading a book, watching a video, yeah, whatever your inspirational wisdom leads you to do. So that is something that occurred to me that I found very interesting when I spoke with them. I was like, that was before Skype was invented. I was like, no way, seriously?
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, and I think Jan especially is someone really inspirational. Who's someone who really just follows her feeling, follows that peaceful feeling within, and just lets life come to her. Really, I think she's had so many beautiful. She'll say herself, like, so many beautiful kind of synchronicities and just things showing, and to Chip as well, just kind of life does show up if you let it. And yeah, beautiful opportunities they've had to, like, travel the world and talk and meet. Yeah, they've just got beautiful stories, and all it has come from is just trusting that feeling within. And she says, prioritizing peace of mind, which is beautiful. And I think our intellect wants to make it more complicated and say it can't be that easy. And that we can sort of almost take life and control it and bend it to our will. But I think they're great living and breathing examples of actually just letting life's plan come to you and just enjoying that, because all of the amazing things that have happened to them that they couldn't have really engineered themselves if they tried. Yeah.
I love that, and that is something that I am learning myself to trust more, because it's very different from the personal world in terms of not giving any big names of, you go and make it happen and you create goals and you've got a list. I used to be one of those with a 10-year plan list on my purse. Checking it, tick it twice. So how am I doing? I need a new strategy. Like, and I'm laughing because it feels so funny, like looking back. And at the same time, at the time was the best I had. It was, at least I thought it was the best I had. And a friend of mine it says quite regularly that each person is doing the best they can at their current level of understanding. So that was my understanding back then, that in order to make things happen and to be successful, you need to work really, really hard, which I did and still do. But at the same time, nowadays I've got more ease with it. There is less mental struggle. And the question always was, how am I doing? It's like, yeah, it feels more organic. Yeah. And something just occurred to me talking of work. So you have been a video producer for 10 years now. So you came across this understanding about 4 years ago. So how has your take on your profession, how has your take changed?
Well, it's funny because I think once I sort of started exploring this and doing the coaching and things, I immediately wanted to go, right, no video, like that's yesterday's news. I can't be bothered to like make videos for people's brands and stuff. And it was my initial thought was sort of get rid of it. Let's just talk about oneness instead. And then, but again, it was an interesting one where I think it was a good example of where I was trying to force the issue with developing a coaching practice straight away. And it was really stuttering. Meanwhile, the video work was effortlessly coming to me and I wasn't really marketing it. But it kept coming to me without me trying. And I got to the point where I was I'd set up this coaching, sort of fledgling coaching business with a friend, and it was, I just suddenly had this point where I realised it wasn't right, and it was a sort of, okay, I'm going to stop struggling against the flow, and sort of, I suppose, re-embrace what I was doing within video, and seeing the potential of it, for connection. And I think, how things have evolved is what can emerge from really powerful conversations and interviews, with video, that's quite unique to the medium, and how people can really, especially coaches or solo kind of entrepreneurs, they can really share their passion and their heart through video, and give people a sense of what they do, and it feels like you're there kind of in the room with them, so I've kind of been exploring the power of that, in the last few years, and also how, what I didn't see originally is how, and I see this actually working with other coaches, is that they don't often see the power of what they've already done, and how that can be brought into their current coaching. So rather than going straight for, like, let's talk about oneness and things like that, which is fine, and I think it's perfectly doable, they might be missing the power of what they've already got, and you know, I realised I could coach people on their message from a place of bringing quite a lot of experience into that, and actually I could combine the video and the coaching in a way that I didn't initially see. I thought it was just one or the other. It was very black and white, and yeah, it's kind of just been embracing both sides, really, and it's just it feels like there's a flow to it that is happening, rather than a abrupt about turn, if that makes sense, which is what I want. Like, I want to do a handbrake turn, and in the end I just had to admit that wasn't going to work, so now it's more about marrying the two, and that's been really enjoyable, because it's really rewarding to work with people, to help them find their own voice, and start articulating what they're sharing, which can be quite intangible, and making it marketable, making it sellable, making it relevant to their audience.
Yes, I love that, and I'm so glad you spoke about it, because I guess one of the things that I've noticed, and might be just my perception, is that sometimes people come across, they've got this interest, they become a I was about to say expert, but for me, expert is someone who studies a subject for 100 hours. So they could even be a master at what they do, meaning that they've been doing the same thing for the last 10 years, or at least they've been studying a subject for the last 10 years. And then they come across this understanding, and they may be led to believe that letting go means to throw the water with the baby in it. How do you say it?
The baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
like, poor baby. And it's not required at all. And what I heard in what you say is that it is a natural and effortless evolution. It evolves. And I remember in one of our private conversations we had, and you said there is a reason why the person has been doing that thing for 10, 15, 20 years. There is a reason, right? And there is a lot of value in that. There is a lot of expertise in that. So when you use the word marrying things together, I just love it. because it mostly from the aspect of ease that occurred to me. And at a later stage, if the person says, okay, no, that's it, I'm done, so be it. But it's just people make aware is not a requirement, because there is a lot of value. Yeah, they've been digging the mine for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. So yeah, there is a lot of value what they've done already, all the experiences they've accrued to sustain them and take them to the next stage of whatever they choose to do or whatever they are called to do next.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think part of the reason it's difficult to see the value in what you've already done is that it's quite hard to see the value in yourself, in like your kind of innate skills that, you know, make up the fabric of you, but are actually quite hard to objectively see because they're too close to you. And what's easier to see is those bits of your work that you don't enjoy. So when I was thinking of video, I was thinking, oh gosh, I've just got to sit in front of a computer screen all day and edit, and it's very technically detailed, lots of focus, and I was kind of all of those things which used to sort of nag at me were very much in my awareness. They were like very much front and center because, you know, when I thought the things that weren't quite right, that was just there. But the subtler parts of my work and the subtler parts of what I was doing with clients, and that were sort of just kind of part of the fabric of my day without really noticing. Those we don't see, but those are the nuggets. Those are the kind of juicy bits that we can carry on bringing into, if we're going into coaching or into a new role. That is what will take you there. And I mean, it could be as simple as, you know, are you like looking at your character? Are you someone who's quite warm and encouraging? Are you, as a coach, do you make people feel at ease very easily? Is it just something that, you know, people are just very honest with you because you know you feel they feel at home with you straight away? All these kind of things, which are you probably wouldn't notice about yourself because it's just so part of who you are. But it's those are interesting to explore and to examine, because those are those things that actually, that's you at your best, and you doing you at your best is really enjoyable and effortless, and that's the like lovely point where you're really enjoying what you're doing and you're being really well rewarded for it.
Yeah, so you were sharing about the value of seeing your own strengths. Please carry on, Jo.
Yeah, I just think it's not something that we do very often, because it's quite hard. It's usually quite subtle things, but it's really valuable, and it's kind of looking at those universal strengths that you have, rather than perhaps specific skills or things like that. So I think, and that's actually the core of coaching in a way, is kind of helping you see your own beauty, helping you see what you do bring to the world, and helping you let go of all those thoughts about yourself that just kind of sometimes are louder, but are much more transient. That's kind of like just it's just noise that sounds clanging, but actually is hasn't got the permanence of seeing your own light and what you bring. So yeah, so I find it interesting that whatever starting place you come with coaching, whether it's talking about messaging or talking about relationships or talking about business, it's always coming back to that same point of seeing your okayness, seeing the beauty of here and now and you and whatever, however you start, that's where you'll end. And I think that's interesting point to raise as well, because as 3 principles coaches, the temptation is to go straight for the jugular of let's talk about, you know, how reality is created, or the truth of life, or really big meaty topics, and thinking that's the only way you can have deep conversations, whereas actually lots of different routes will come to that point anyway. So there is depth in having a coaching session about parenting, or there is depth from having a conversation about your marketing, and yeah, so the kind of world's your oyster in terms of where you want to start with people and take them down that journey.
I love what you just said right there, Jo. It's so beautiful. That does not require any adding on. And I'm getting a sense that we are coming for a closure for today's episode. So, okay, what is the easiest way for people to reach out to you, Jo?
I've got a Facebook page, which is Jo Munday Video Production. My name is Jo and then Munday, like the day with a U. My website is jo-munday.com. And and my email is jo@jo-munday.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Got some resources on my website and things like that if you'd like to explore.
That's wonderful. Thank you. For me, if you would like to get in contact, the easiest way is to find me on Facebook. You can go to www.facebook.com/Clésia.Mendes, and I'll spell that for you. So that would be facebook.com/CLESIA.MENDES. Or if you prefer, you can also find me on my website. So that would be www.clesiamensch.com. And for this month only, I'll be offering a few complimentary coaching sessions. So if you would like to have a conversation, just send me a private message on Facebook. As I said, that would be facebook.com/Clésia.Mendes. Now, Jo, what would be your parting thoughts for our audience today?
That's a good question. I think from just what we've explored today, it just reminds me again of remembering the power that you've got within, and the guidance that's always there, and just trusting that, and even if it doesn't feel like it's there, even just having the intention of wanting to hear it, can tease it out.
Beautiful. Jo, thank you so much for this. It was wonderful to have you with us in the show. For our audience, remember to come back next week for another episode of Womanhood from the Inside Out, and click the button subscribe. So I'll see you next week then. Thank you very much, Jo. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Clésia. Thanks. Bye.